And look, thanks for inviting me on. It's great to speak, and you know, I've been watching various bits of the past couple of days, and it's been exciting. And I think you know what we mean by you know, using the public network is in the mobile network, the public mobile network, you know, the mobile network that we're used to using day in, day out. It is possible for us to dimension that network in a way where we can build private networks into it. In fact, back in the early days of GSM, we were doing this on the voice side for many years, and it was actually quite a profitable service where you could dial your desk extension, if we remember them, the old DDIs, and if you had a mobile, it would go straight to it, and it would be a free call because it was an internal office call. Yeah. Well, if you think about extending that into the data side of mobile, leveraging the public network as a kind of VPN attached to your private network, or actually just using the pure assets, the infrastructure, where we can set up, you know, ways to share the radio, share the connectivity via the radio, through the private network, core network, so that coverage gaps or, you know, new locations or anything that you know, your building of your own private infrastructure doesn't cover, you can leverage the public network, but also to trial things. You know, I think you probably heard from Mark Overton, where the sales cycle for a private network is not trivial, and it's all about building a case. And if there's a way that you can leverage the macro network, the public network, to trial things, as opposed to potentially investing for months or trying to, you know, convince an organization that a public network has value, sorry, a private network has value, then using the you know, some parts of the public infrastructure, and spinning up a private core. So, you know, in my old place, you know, we have the ability to spin up a core network in our cloud, or use the public cloud. You know, you can start to trial things, test things, but you can leverage it in many different ways. So I think this is a coming together of, you know, what's available today, expanding upon that, building your own private infrastructure where it makes sense to. You know, if you're in a heavily shielded factory that's made of metal, then probably you're going to have signal problems, so it makes sense to build a private network there. But in the car park, or in the staff areas, or in the office area, perhaps less so. Or if you're a big wide campus, you know, the cost to build a private network can be challenging, and you still need to offer your staff access to the public network anyway, because they need it. So this is effectively, you know, virtualizing, you know, potential leveraging network slicing, although I've got some doubts about that in terms of long-term viability. But leveraging all those things together to give that private network experience, you know, consistently, and if need be, ubiquitously as well.
So I think that's quite interesting, that if you have to go private, because as you say, maybe if you've got a factory full of metal stuff that plays hell with radio signals, you keep that to the minimum, because that's the most pragmatic and commercially sensible option. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so talking about this and using the macro network and the private only, where really you've got no choice. What challenges do you face doing this? I mean, what would you say are the critical success factors to getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly being clear about what you want to build and the drivers for it, first off, Annie, is crucially important. Yeah. Otherwise you can be very vague and spend a lot of time and effort on something that isn't valuable. Then I think it's, you know, and it probably won't surprise you because I've been banging this drum for a long time, but it's all about the tooling and automation that you've got, both for the private network user, but also the MNO that's offering the service. So, you know, how easy is it for that MNO to spin up a private network traditionally, then how can they leverage the assets and the infrastructure that they already have in a way that's a compelling offer to the business that needs it and meets their requirements, and then if you imagine interleaving that with the private infrastructure, or potentially even someone else's infrastructure entirely. It might not be, we often think of private networks as one supplier offering one network service. I think that's quite an immature view. I feel that we're going to see, private networks leveraging, could be leveraging some of BT's infrastructure, some of Vodafone's infrastructure, and then the client themselves building their own infrastructure as part of that. But the only way that's going to work is through automation, through tooling, through a way that allows customers to leverage the power of the network without them themselves having to become network engineers or network experts. They look to their supplier to do that for them and to make it easy for them to do that. And then in the future, how those automations integrate with the experts of industry. So, how does a private network builder integrate with a Bosch who creates, manufacturing platforms? How do they automate that? How do they think about the automation of that? And kind of what's the maturity level to go through? It could be just something that's analytical based, and something that's actually command and control. So, but I genuinely think in the world of networks, we have to be really easy to leverage, really easy to deploy, and really easy to manage. And automation is the only choice we have.
So I'm really interested in that idea of combining different networks, like, say, Vodafone and BT. So quite interesting listening to Martina, our keynote speaker, and then some of the questions we had from the audience as well, about kind of defense and guarding against another party being too successful. It seems to me that if you had two national networks in any country serving one customer, it might be a big customer, somebody running a port or an airport or whatever, that seems fraught with difficulty. Technologically, maybe not so much, but when something goes wrong, who's holding the baby?
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
Absolutely. I think, look, it's not, if it was easy, we would have done it, right?
Yeah.
But I feel that, I often talk about, how we innovate beyond the smartphone. And I think part of that innovation is working with customers in partnership, with experts in their trade, but also other network providers, and doing that for the overall benefit of the customer. I think, one supplier providing a customer with 3/4 of what they need versus two suppliers supplying the customer with everything that they need. If you think about the outcomes that you need to get from a private network, probably it's a tough case to get off the ground initially, but the more that you can load that case with benefits because you're able to get what you want, then I think the more valuable that is. And also, let's recognize that, I'll pick a favorite brand of mine, BMW. They're not just based in the UK, they're based all over Europe. They've got, the BMW make minis here in the UK and Rolls-Royce, but they have plants all over Europe. And I think, if an organization like them is going to go out and do a private network, they're going to want to work with organizations that can serve them, not just in one location. And that's going to drive operators to actually be able to work together in a way that we probably aren't used to, but our customers are going to expect us. BMW buy tires from Pirelli and from Goodyear. They don't, they've got a relationship about how they test them and how they work to test them and what works. They're going to expect the same from their telecoms and digital suppliers, that, you're a set of grown-up organizations, why can't you work together? And I've seen some elements of the start of this coming together in those sort of scenarios. I think, we're always going to argue about who owns the customer. That's a kind of a challenge, but actually customers tend to pick that, not the service providers. So in some respects, that problem will solve itself. And I think, you know, being the best you can be and being relevant to that customer will get you in that seat. I think the second issue around that is, you know, how do we ensure that we're delivering what the customer needs? And you know, I think that's really easy. If we're not, they'll simply just turn it off. You know, we see that with other telecom services where customers are increasingly focused on their own bottom line, their own costs, and anything that's not driving value, you know, they're pretty aggressive in turning off. And you know, we're going to talk about this now, but there's a whole bunch of tools to help customers optimize their spend, both in the telco space, but actually across all industry. And that is getting more and more. The armaments for customers to use, let's say, are getting more and more powerful and more complete. So in my mind, you know, we kind of have to work together for the benefit of those customers, and we have to sort these things out. And I genuinely believe that there is a way of doing that.
And I guess the winners are going to be the operators who do it.
Yeah, and look,
I think the gain is more than the petty squabble.
Yeah, and look, and if we don't do it, there's a bunch of hyperscaler guys ready.
I was going to say, there's a lot of other people hanging around at the back who,
and also, you know, we see some of the other companies, you know, we see some other companies get involved in private networks, the Telcos, other infrastructure organizations. Now, personally speaking, I think any company going with a Telco to build a private network is very questionable. They do not have the expertise telcos have, but they do have some great assets, and they have expertise in the infrastructure side. So working, you know, jointly with them and to build solutions, I think is absolutely going to be the case. And again, we're starting to see that in some of the local government deals, certainly here in the UK, but I've also seen that in Germany as well.
So just to think about this, so we want to use the macro public network for private networks as much as we can. So let's just look at the benefits. I guess cost is one. You just touched on another, which is the level of expertise in running networks, because if there's anything telcos know about, it's running networks. I guess another is security. Is that it, or can you think of more things?
Yeah.
I mean, is telcos becoming better ecosystem players a factor, or do you think that's hype rather than real?
I think
Not that I'm cynical at all.
No, I mean, I think you're right to be cynical because I think our track record doesn't demonstrate. Look, I think, you know, back to the previous question that I asked Martina, you know, we can't keep doing what we're doing because it isn't working. And you know, we hear in some parts of the world where their 5G network build is complete, and they're starting to think about, okay, what do we build now? That'll be 6G. So, and right now, you know, there's lots of operators I think are going to struggle to make that case. So we have to work with customers in a way that's very different to how we've worked. And, you know, I remember we were at a government 5G event about maybe 4 years ago. And you know, and I really put the case that 5G is the era of collaboration. If we're going to realize the power of 5G, it needs to be everyone working together, where telcos can lead. First of all, you know, clearly, you know, I think we're a very trusted space. You know, customers tend to trust us, and certainly the research that I've seen in that space, you know, highlights that. We are very strong in security. We have very good relationships with, you know, government and security experts in the government. That gives us a view of the landscape that I think is quite rare. We know how to build things that scale, and we know how to build things that survive. And you know, even a challenge, I'm not even sure the hyperscalers can do that as well as we do that. So if you're, you know, if you've got a factory with thousands of workers in it and you need a private network, what you don't want is that private network to stop and you to have 1,000 workers who can't do anything, and you're not getting, you know, whatever product you're making out the door. So I think that's an area where, you know, telcos can bring massive value, and then leveraging some of the capabilities that we've got built into the macro network can help us bring that to bear both in the customer's private networks, you know, where they're building their own infrastructure or we're building it for them, and in the and remember, you know, I think folks quite, you know, think about private networks as a bunch of radios in a building. It's much more than that. It's a core network, it's authentication, it's devices. Again, we can help with device testing and device certification. We can work with, you know, other and actually, if there's one place that the ecosystem's worked well over the years is in that device to telco relationship. And I think we're able, you know, like we test every year. We got a new iPhone and a new Samsung. We do that. We're geniuses at getting that out. You know, every year there's probably a new tool from Bosch that helps someone build something that could have 5G in it, or a new capability within a factory, or a new sensor for a port. And I think we can bring the expertise to get, you know, those things out into the field, make sure they're working, make sure we're getting the right telemetry back from them, and then also take all that data and offer the customer analytics about, you know, here's what the network's seeing, here's how it's performing. Actually, you know, it's funny that we noticed on Thursday you had a lower output. Well, actually, it turns out that, you know, on this day we saw an awful lot of devices not functioning for some reason. You know, I think there's a lot more we can instrument with customers to show how their business is performing. And it's stuff that we have, you know, we've been working on for some time, both stuff we're developing ourselves, but also things that we're working in partnership with. But, you know, I think, you know, Annie, I kind of ask you to kind of hold the industry to account on this, because if we aren't able to build those partner systems and we aren't able to build those, you know, that whole ecosphere of partnerships, then I feel that we're not going to be innovative. I feel that we're going to be, you know, still depending upon, you know, whatever iPhone 20 or 25, when actually we need to find other revenue streams, and we need to find
well, and it's a matter of pretty seriously acute urgency.
Absolutely, you know,
most European operators are sitting on tens of billions of debt. I mean, it's scary.
And look, I think also some of them are looking to, you know, monetize certain parts of their infrastructure in ways that I think they might regret. You know, we see the tower companies, we see other organizations buying pieces of infrastructure. Is that and telcos effectively moving to become, you know, folks that send out bills, really. I'm not convinced that's the right model for telcos. And I think, you know, when I look at the US market, although that market's doing much better than Europe, you know, I hear from my colleagues there many times that, you know, they kind of wish that they owned more of the infrastructure, and quite many of them sold their infrastructure a long time ago. So, you know, I think you're right. I think that there's an emergency on this, and, you know, leveraging the macro network to start the process of building private networks, and what is a long, you know, going to be a longer sales cycle than anyone, you know, would like, and, you know, both customer and supplier. I think that's a great way of doing that. And actually, we used to, it's something that telcos have done before. And so in the business space, you know, we would use network acceleration as a way to sell VPNs. You know, hey, we're selling network acceleration, but by the way, it comes with this VPN that you can use. And I think we need to be innovative about how we approach that, but also I think we need to be super innovative on the pricing models, you know, much more pay-as-you-use or seat-based pricing models, which, you know, again, there's lots of industries that do that well. I think we've got much more to learn there.
Okay, I'm also wondering about how much resistance there might be. You've mentioned Bosch a couple of times, just as a good example of a device maker. So I don't think we're picking on Bosch.
Yeah, other device makers are available.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just thinking that, I mean, I guess they are going to feel a bit like they don't want to lose control or feel like they're being pushed into a you know, a lesser role or a different role, where they might have less to gain. So I'm thinking that there might be all sorts of resistance to this macro public network being used privately. I think a lot of people going to want to stand their grounds, sort of thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, this solution won't work for everybody for sure, right? And there are things that, you know, could be challenged within it. However, you know, I look at these companies as well, and they need to innovate. And you know, they you know, how many Bosch level, you know, the thing where you put it across to make sure you're hanging your picture level. How many of them did they lose because they put a level in this device? So you know, none of these companies can be challenged by technology. And I think the way that you avoid that is by being a leader in technology yourself. So, you know, they're going to look to, and you know, having connected devices is a crucially important part of that, or connected capabilities. And I think that, you know, my engagement with those organizations is, you know, they're actually frustrated with network operators because they feel that we're hard to deal with. They feel that we're not thinking beyond the smartphone, and that's what I really mean, which is, you know, I think there's a whole bunch of organizations out there that want to work with us in a much more, you know, partnership way. And you know, obviously, you know, there needs to be, you know, a shared risk and a shared win for both organizations that do that. But when I go out and talk to those companies, you know, I really do feel, O'Neill, if we could do this, it would be fantastic. And I think we've got to embrace that and that positivity, because you know, their customers are our customers. And you know, if our joint customer is winning, you know, I tend to feel that, well, we'll probably both be winning as well. So I don't think we've got a choice, Annie. You know, and if we don't do it, I think our customers will just do it themselves, and we will miss out. And also, you know, our customers that again themselves are looking to get into new markets and new things. If all of a sudden you know, they build their own capabilities, so well, actually, why don't we sell this to the guys down the road? And if you think, you know, and maybe I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but you think of the airline ticketing agencies, you know, there used to be tons of them, and then one guy said, "I'll do it for everybody," and then everyone's like, "Yeah, why?"
Go, yeah.
So, you know, again, look, we're far away from that wall, but I do think that we need to. I think our customers are desperate for technology companies and you know, companies in verticals that are experts to work together to bring these solutions.
Yeah.
Use the power of the network to really, you know, improve what they do for their own customers, again, many of which are customers of ours. So you know, it's down to our own ability to be open-minded, and also down to our own ability to take risks and experiment. And you know, in my experience, you know, I've worked in telco probably for longer than I care to admit, but when telcos do their best work is usually when they feel the most threatened, because the level of risk about doing nothing becomes less than the risk about doing something. And I think we've got to focus on that mindset of trialing and testing. And this is one area where, you know, we've already got this network, it works, it serves millions of customers, we know the performance of it, we can build upon it for these specific use cases, use them for trials, use them to fill gaps. You know, it's hard to see a lose for us in that space.
I've just got one more area I'd like us to touch on, please, and that is do you think this whole approach will see a sort of the traditional cell-based network coming closer to MPLS and SD-WAN and VPNs, which you touched on already, and also network as a service, which we discussed yesterday, and which seems to me to be a really tough nut for the telcos to crack. They all want to do it, but they all seem to be struggling mightily with NAS.
Yeah, look, I think you know, so you know, we mentioned BMW earlier on. They've got a massive network all over the world that connects their plants, their branches, and their cars together. Frankly, you know, the need to leverage private networks as an extension of them is just a natural evolution in my way. Now, Are there different security requirements? Are there different authorization requirements? For sure. But what we don't want to do, what customers don't like, is complexity. So we've got to figure out how we keep both, all the network services that we offer for customers, including private mobile networks. We need to make sure that we're making that easy for them to use. And historically, we haven't been great at that. And actually, for telcos, it means that we've given money away, because you get a consultancy or you get an integrator come in and do that work for us. I go back to my automation point. If we get the automation right, building network as a service is actually pretty straightforward, and I think we can charge for it, because I think we can help customers save money on their integration costs and actually, grab hold of some of that spend that they've got in building and putting these networks together and securing them. And again, no one is in a better position to do that than the telecommunications industry. We've got a great set of partners that help us in this space, and I think that's a really strong area. Network as a service is hard. First of all, it means about 16 different things to people. That's been one of our big challenges, and actually I was debating that not so long ago. I think the second part to this is kind of actually in that network as a service. What of it, again, there are certain places where you're going to have to leverage other infrastructure providers or other telecommunication providers. How do we make sure that we got consistency no matter what the service? Because frankly, customers don't care. They just want it to work. But I do see some really exciting things coming out of this. The guys at Telstra are doing some amazing things in networks as a service. My old place at BT, they've got a great set of foundations with Network Cloud, and they're working aggressively on their whole MPLS service that, they're one of the biggest in the world, and translating that and making it easier for customers to use. And there's this, as the world moves to a much more on-demand, sort of work type, telcos are going to have to figure out how they on-demand connect customers for the needs that they've got. A combination of 5G private networks and network as a service is the answer for that. And I think whoever gets that moving the quickest, I think will really see some value, versus, right now there's a obviously a big push to build fiber and 5G. But customers are looking at it thinking, why do I need to upgrade? Why do I need this? So if you can build that whole managed network solution that's helping them be more productive, helping them be more secure, then I think you're going to win. And I think you're going to have I think the stickiness in winning a customer like that is huge.
Neil, we've got to stop there. But I think the first thing you said to me when we rehearsed this was, we need to build digital solutions people need. And I think that kind of sums up our conversation.
Absolutely. 100%, Annie. That is it. Customers don't want to be pulling jigsaws together to get what they want. They literally want to, press the big green button and it all just happens. Now, there's a long way to go on that, but we've got to show that we're up for that, and we've got to show that we're willing to invest and build it.